paper crafters, today we're going to make this beautiful watercolored Easter card. Come along and join me. So I want to show you how you can create this cool watercolor effect where you have a lighter in the middle and a little bit more darkness around the outside edge. It's super easy. Plus, you're going to have a wonderful card made out of it. So let me show you the great set that I'm working with today. So this is the Excellent Eggs stamp set and dies. So it is a bundle that's currently in our January to April 2024 mini catalog. And this is great not just for Easter, but also for spring and a general thinking of you. I loved this one right here with these little bunnies inside. That's what we're going to work with today. Now it has matching dies that will go around the outside edges of our Easter eggs, as well as around our little bunny if we were going to use him. And then there's little shapes that you can create your own Easter eggs. We're not going to be doing that today, but there are so many possibilities with this great set, and it's wonderful for spring. So it's one that's going to stay in your stash and be one you'll use over and over again. So to create any kind of watercolor card, you want to have watercolor paper. And this is the Fluid 100 watercolor paper from Stampin' Up. And I am going to use my Stamparatus to stamp on this. So it has a little bit of a rough surface and it's a thicker paper. Your basic white paper will not work for watercolor. So if you've tried watercoloring before and been disappointed, that could be why. I'm just going to place it right into my Stamparatus. Make sure that's going to line up. It is. And I'm going to use my embossing buddy. Now here's a tip for holding your embossing buddy close to your Versamark. Just take an elastic and wrap it around so that you're never lost. It's never lost. And I'm going to give this a little run over with my embossing buddy, and then we're going to ink it up really well. So I'm going to ink up my stamp with my Versamark, get it into all the little grooves there, and then press it down, and then pull in your paper towel, and it just allows you to get a smoother run over top of your stamp. So give it a fairly good pressure there because it's going onto thicker paper. And we're going to give it another run with some Versamark. Now we're going to take that off of there. Always take your plate out of your Stamparatus. And then we're going to pull in our gold embossing powder and give that a good sprinkle over top. And if you've had good coverage, you should have gold everywhere. Give that just a little flick and then heat it up with your heat tool. Now before you go ahead and start watercoloring, just turn that in the light a little bit and make sure that there are no darker black areas. And I can see right down here, I can just give it another little shot. So now comes the magic. So we are going to watercolor using our Stampin' Right markers. And I've pulled in 3 different ones, but we're first of all going to watercolor the background with a really light green. So I thought that because this was all looking like it's on the grass, we are going to use our soft seafoam. And to get a little bit of your ink just onto the plastic, you're going to press it together. So what I normally do is press a little bit more from the back than the front, and then lift it up. And what you've created is a little pool of color. I'm going to be using the water painters, and I'm going to use the large water painter, and it has water right in the reservoir. And first thing we're going to do is we are going to give ourselves some water. So you're going to press where it says push, and you're going to push out some of the plain water. Now you can always have a little jug of water with you as well, just in case. Mine seems to really be tough to push through, and yours might be as well. So just give yourself some plain water there, and we're just going to go over top of, not everywhere. Okay, so I've got lots of water. Pull in that paper towel and just take off some of that water. So I'm going to go everywhere. I'm not going where the bunnies are. So I'm going to try and avoid the bunnies and just go around them. This does not have to be precise. So when you have a lot of water, So if you have a lot of water sitting around, just pick up the edge of your paper towel and just go in and sort of suck up some of that water, because you want it to be wet, but you don't want it to be sopping wet. So now I'm going to go in and I'm just going to pick up some of that green, and I'm going to go where it's wet. So I'm just going to start on the left-hand side, and I'm just going to brush it all the way down the side. And because we put all that water on there, the color should just move, should move for you and go into the middle of the little Easter egg. And all I'm doing is picking up a little bit more color here and going everywhere. So now I want to pick up a little bit more water because some of my water has dried. I'm just going to pick up a little bit more and go over this part here. So the really big thing to think about with watercolor is you need to have water for it. Okay, so I've chosen a really light color. So if it does get into where the flowers are or where the bunnies are, it's not going to be the end of the world, because we can go ahead and put some color over top of that, or we can easily take the color out of that. So again, we're just laying down that color. You don't want it too dark in the middle part here, but you do want a little bit of color there. So a little bit of that green. Okay, so you can see that there's color there, and you can also still see that there's water on the card, and that's okay. That's what we want. So now go in, now that we've got that first layer down, it's starting to dry. So just go ahead. It's still wet enough that it can pull in a little bit of that color, and we're going to give a little darker edge of green, the same green, around that left edge and along the bottom. Okay, so this is where you want to really be quite careful that you're not putting on more water here. You're just putting on color, because there's still enough water to carry that. So just move it in. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to take, and we'll push that off to the side. I'm going to take some more colors. So we've got Granny Apple Green, and I'm just going to make a little bit of that onto my block, a tiny little bit of Garden Green, and then a tiny little bit as well of our Flirty Flamingo. So I'm going to pick up just a tiny little bit of that Granny Apple Green and just go around the outside edge. I'm going to pick up a little bit of water, and I'm going to move that color just a little bit out. So really what we're doing is we're creating a shadow kind of effect. It's going to be a little bit darker in here than it is on the outside. And it's going to also brighten it up a little bit. So even though that soft sea foam is a beautiful color, this just gives a little bit more life. So you can see that it's a little bit dry where I'm working. So I'm picking up a little bit of water. Just adding it in there. And that's all there is really to watercoloring. So all we're doing is adding just a hint of color here. Now, if you're gonna do this, try this at home, you wanna make sure you don't have too much water. And then I'm just gonna clean off my brush a little bit, and I'm gonna go in with some of the Flirty Flamingo right over top of our little flower. Now I've noticed that there's sort of three this size flower, one just down on the bottom here. So even though I'd put green there, now I'm going to put some Flirty Flamingo, and I'm going to clean that off as well and just go onto your paper towel. I really do need to press in order to get that. Now, if you have that same issue, just take another one of the brushes. There you go. And you can easily get some more water just onto your block. That's a lot of water. I'm never going to use that amount. I'm going to pick up a little, tiny little bit of water and a little bit of the Garden Green. So I'm just going to shade a tiny bit. That's a lot of green. So I just want a tiny bit. So here, when you're watercoloring, less is more. So when you think about that, just less, if you're trying to put on a lot of color, think, maybe not. maybe I'll just go for a little bit of just a touch. So I am very softly, very lightly touching the card. Just enough so that when I put my color down, it's going to merge into the rest of the color. So I really like the look of having darkness on the outside edge where the shadow is, and then having light in the middle. It just brings the middle to life. It really gives you a lot more interest. So I'm just going to clean off that brush again, and I'm just going to add a tiny little bit more color to our flowers, just to brighten them up a little bit. So you can see how little you actually use in terms of the tiny little flower down here. How much color? Hardly any. Okay? And that is all the watercoloring that I'm going to do. So this is where we're going to use our dies. And the cool thing about these dies is that they have stitching lines around them. So this size is the middle egg, and we're going to put that around, and we're going to run that through our Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine. And here we have it cut out. You can see the stitching lines all the way around. And while I'm at it, I'm just going to also cut one size bigger around the egg as well, and that's going to mat our egg. And you can really see that this one has a cool, it's got a double, it's one stitch line and then dots. And we're going to go ahead and just glue those two together. And when you're using, trying to glue down your watercolor paper, I would recommend your white liquid glue in the green bottle, which is your Tombow glue. And this is just going to go straight down. And it's because your paper is just a little thicker. Okay, so I'm just also going to put just a block over top of that so it dries. Okay, so let's move on to the rest of the card. So the measurements are all on my blog for what you need to make this card, but it's soft sea foam, and we have that's our card base. And then we're doing a soft sea foam on top of that. And I'm going to take the Basics 3D embossing folder, and we're going to run our panel right through that. So then we have our basics. This is the cross hatch pattern, and I'm going to go ahead and glue that down as well on top of our folded card. And now I have just a little piece of our soft sea foam. We're going to use our Granny Apple Green, so it's going to match the egg. And I've pulled in There's No Bunny Like You. And we're just going to stamp that. There's a little piece of our Flirty Flamingo, and we're just going to put a little bit of glue in the middle of that so that our piece will stick down just fine. You want to try and have the same amount of space on both sides of it. Okay, so now what we have is we've got our words, we have our watercolored Easter egg. I'm going to put that on with some dimensionals. So place that in the middle top part of the card, centered. We're going to put some dimensionals on the back here as well. And place that underneath, also centered. And then just a couple embellishments. So we have the adhesive back hearts and flowers. And I really like just the little daisy here. Use your Take Your Pick tool to pick that guy up and just place it up here. And then some classic matte dots, and these are the vanilla ones actually, but I thought that they still worked fine. And we're going to put that on either side. There you go. And that's your card. And here's your other card so that you can see that they are a beautiful card, nice and springy. That little touch of gold adds some elegance to it. And whoever you give that to is really going to love it. Thanks very much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this project. Please pop on over to my blog at designwithjo.ca to pick up all the measurements and so that you can make this at home. Have a great paper crafting day. Bye-bye.